They said a billionaire had it all until the night his disabled son tried to dance and stumbled. People laughed. Cameras rolled. But then a black waitress in broken sneakers stepped forward, held out her hand, and did something no amount of money ever could she let the boy lead. What happened next shook the room and changed the father's life forever. They laughed at us the moment we walked in. Not all of them, not outright, but I could see the side eyes, the half-covered smirks, the way conversation paused when we passed by their table. One man whispered something behind his napkin and nodded in our direction, and his date stifled a giggle. I wanted to leave. God, I always wanted to leave. But my son had spent 3 days preparing for this moment, and I had run out of excuses. Don't worry about them, Dad, James said softly, clutching my hand tighter with the only side of his body he could fully control. His left foot dragged just a little behind the right, and his tie was crooked, but his smile. That smile could light up a city. We're here for the dance, remember? I forced a smile back. Yeah, buddy, I remember. I'm Jonathan Merrick, CEO of Meritech Global. Net worth $3.2 billion according to Forbes. I've built data empires negotiated with sheikhs, and once convinced the Chinese government to rewrite a regulation overnight. I have 5 mansions, 3 jets, and enough power to make presidents return my calls in under 5 minutes. And yet, I couldn't save my son from the car crash that stole half his mobility and almost all his childhood. You see, all that wealth never taught me how to dance, not the way James needed me to. The fundraiser was at a private ballroom in Savannah gold leaf ceiling live quartet champagne that cost more than my pilot's monthly wage. It was for the Georgia Disability Advocacy League, a cause I only pretended to understand until James's body twisted in ways that made bath time an Olympic event. The entire guest list was aristocratic pity dipped in sequins. They came to be seen supporting those they would never dine with. I wore my most subdued tux and the darkest mask I had. It didn't matter. Everyone knew who I was. They always did. James tugged at my sleeve when the music changed. They're playing the foxtrot, Dad. It's the same one I practiced with Ms. Henrietta. I crouched beside his wheelchair. You sure you're ready, pal? He nodded like it was the simplest thing in the world. I don't care if I fall. I just want to try. That's when I saw her for the first time. The waitress. She was standing at the far corner of the hall with a tray of untouched wine glasses. Tall, proud posture. Brown skin catching the golden glow of chandeliers like honey warmed by firelight. Her afro was pulled back into a regal puff, and her uniform looked too tight across her shoulders like she was used to lifting more than just trays. Our eyes locked for half a second. I turned away. James stood, wobbled. My arms shot out instinctively, but he caught himself, jaw tight, determined. Then a miracle happened. She stepped forward. The waitress. She slid her tray onto a nearby table and approached James like they'd known each other for years. She knelt beside him, smiled, not the smile of sympathy or pity, but something I hadn't seen in months. Trust. You know, she said you look like a natural dancer to me. James beamed. Do you know how to foxtrot? She winked. Baby, I was raised on rhythm. I froze. So did half the room. A billionaire's disabled son being led to the dance floor by a black waitress in this room. You could hear the shock ripple through pearls and champagne flutes, and yet there they went. Together. Step by trembling step. Her hand gently guided his waist. His foot followed hers with staggering effort. She didn't correct him. She didn't slow down. She matched his pace and she let him lead. He led. For the first time since the accident, my son led. Gasps whispered like wind across the room. Some filmed it. Others looked away, unsure how to react to beauty wrapped in dissonance. But I forgot to breathe, because I saw it. For just a moment, James wasn't broken. He was free. When they finished, applause broke out in awkward claps and scattered whoops. But James didn't hear it. He turned, grinning, looking at me like he'd just returned from space. "Did you see that, Dad?" I couldn't speak. My throat was tight. So I nodded, and I clapped, and I wept. Afterward, I tried to find her. I wanted to say something, thank you maybe, or offer her something, anything. But she was gone. Vanished into the back hallways like a shadow that healed. I asked the maître d'eau for her name. "New hire," he said, flipping through a clipboard. Shift swapped with someone last minute. No record in the system. Did she give a name? He paused. Said to tell you. Tell the man in the tux that sometimes the ones we try to fix were never broken, just waiting for the right song. And that was it. That night, I went home and opened every video James had of his physical therapy. I watched each one, saw the effort, the courage, the little victories I'd overlooked. Then, I looked in the mirror and saw a man who had mistaken protection for limitation. I'd built empires for myself. Now it was time to build one for him. I didn't know it yet, but that Waitress was about to change everything. Not just for James, for me, for the empire, and for every kid who had ever been told they couldn't dance. They say billionaires don't chase, that we sit back, that things come to us, that people orbit our influence like moons around some cold, distant planet. That might be true in boardrooms and yachts, but not when you've seen your son dance for the first time, and the person responsible for that moment disappears without a trace. I spent the next morning breaking my own rules. I skipped 3 meetings, canceled a shareholder brunch, and sent my jet back to New York empty. I sat in a corner booth of the ballroom's kitchen lounge, black coffee in hand, reviewing security footage with the head of hospitality. "There," I said, pointing to the timestamp. "That's her." The image paused on her back. Straight spine, shoulders pulled almost military. The tray slightly tilted in her hand, balancing wine glasses like weapons. The camera quality was too poor to catch her face. Your staff said she swapped shifts with someone. The manager, a portly man named Gregory, scratched his balding head. "Yeah, but that someone's on vacation in Florida. Says she doesn't even know who took over. No ID, no application, nothing." He hesitated, then handed me a sticky note. A name. Just one word. Noel. That was it. No last name. No address. No explanation. Just Noel, like some wandering myth whispered to children before Christmas. Could be an alias Gregory offered. Some folks don't want a paper trail. Especially he trailed off when I looked at him. Smart man. I left a blank check on his desk with a note. "If she ever shows up again, call me first." Then I left, but she didn't show up. Not that day, not the next. For someone who vanished without a trace, she sure left echoes. James couldn't stop talking about her. Over dinner, he mimicked her steps. In therapy, he quoted her rhythm. Even in his dreams, he'd whisper 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 with a sleepy grin. And me, I began seeing her in the cracks of my life, at board meetings when men praised algorithms over humanity, at award galas where they toasted philanthropy while ignoring the wheelchair ramp, at every glistening marble surface that reflected a man who had built glass castles but forgotten to open the door for his own son. I couldn't focus, couldn't breathe without wondering who she was, why she'd vanished, why that night. And then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, I saw her. It wasn't a dream. I was sitting in my car, stuck at a red light on Eastman and Vine, scrolling through an email about quarterly earnings, when a flash of burgundy caught my eye. Across the street, under the awning of a rundown dance studio, stood her. No uniform this time. Just a faded red hoodie jeans torn at the knees, and sneakers so worn I could see her toe poking through. Her afro was down wild and regal like a crown of storm clouds. She stood barefoot on the studio floor, demonstrating a stretch to a little girl with braces on both legs. I didn't think. I parked illegally and ran across traffic. When she saw me coming, she didn't flinch. "You're him," she said. I stopped short. "You remember, I don't forget faces, especially not ones who cry with pride." I didn't know whether to laugh or apologize. "You're Noelle." She nodded once. "That's all I get. No last name. No. No past," she said. "No strings." I glanced behind her. The studio was empty except for 3 children and a woman sweeping glitter from the floor. Paint peeled from the corners and the stereo had duct tape on its side. "You work here. I live here." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were a battlefield, tired, fierce, guarded. The kind of look you only earn after you've lost everything and still show up the next day. "I want to help you," I said. "No, you don't." "I do. You want to repay me. That's different." I paused. She was right. "I watched you change my son's life in one dance. And what's that worth to you?" "A foundation in my name. A plaque on a wall. A building you'll forget after the ribbon's cut." The way she said it, like she'd heard every promise the world never kept, I had no defense. I lowered my voice. "I want to fund your work. I don't need your money." "Then, what do you need?" She looked me dead in the eye. "I need you to stop saving people like me and start seeing us." That line hit harder than any boardroom ambush. For the next hour, I sat inside that studio on a chair missing one leg, and watched her teach 3 disabled children how to find rhythm in broken limbs. She never once corrected them. She only encouraged, adjusted, adapted. When one boy tripped, she fell with him, on purpose, just so he wouldn't feel alone. By the end, the room was filled with laughter. She turned to me as the class ended. "This place is about giving power back to kids who've had it taken. Not pity, not performance. Power." And suddenly, everything in my world, the stock tickers, the high-rise deals, the autographed walls of corporate offices looked like paper. This studio's rent is paid late every month. But we manage. I stood. "Not anymore." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "I'm not funding you. I'm investing. I want a scholarship in James's name for kids like him. You run it. Full creative control. No board interference." She studied me for a long moment. Then finally she smiled. Not a wide smile. Not a showy one. Just a quiet upturn like sunrise cracking through clouds. "Then let's dance Mr. Merrick." That was the day I stopped looking for her and started learning from her. I didn't know it yet, but Noelle, the girl with no name, no past, no need for my empire, was about to become the one person who could rebuild the part of me that shattered when my son screamed in the hospital 3 years ago. And I hadn't even seen her really dance yet. I had been in boardrooms that could decide the fate of nations. I'd walked marble corridors lined with oil portraits of old money and older lies. I'd outmaneuvered oligarchs and billionaires. But nothing, not one of those moments, prepared me for walking back into that same ballroom this time, not as Jonathan Merrick the mogul, but as James's dad. And this time I wasn't alone. Noelle walked beside me, denim jacket frayed at the elbows, her afro haloed by the soft chandelier light. She didn't dress up. She didn't change herself to fit this world. She brought her world into it. The murmurs started before we even reached the dance floor. Is that her? She's just a waitress, wasn't she? What's he doing with her? But I kept walking, and so did she. Tonight was the unveiling of the James Merrick Scholarship for Adaptive Dance. My staff had prepped the PR, designed the banners, secured the media outlets. They thought it was going to be a photo op. They didn't know I was about to burn the old script. I stepped up to the podium. My name is Jonathan Merrick. I began the mic, catching every breath, and I'm not here tonight as a billionaire or a benefactor. I'm here as a father who finally saw his son truly live. Not in a hospital bed. Not in a therapy session, but on a dance floor. And that moment didn't come from medical breakthroughs or financial privilege. It came from a woman this room didn't even bother to acknowledge. I looked toward Noelle. She stood in the back arms, crossed eyes, sharp. She didn't heal him, I continued. She reminded him he wasn't broken. The room fell silent. And then I said what no one expected. I'm stepping down as CEO of Meritech. Gasps. Cameras flashing. My publicist somewhere behind me dropped her phone. I'm starting something new. Something real. We're launching the Move Again initiative, nationwide programs to bring movement, rhythm, and purpose to disabled children through community-led dance centers. No boards, no bureaucracy. Just music mirrors and mentors. Noelle looked down. Her lip trembled. It was the only time I saw her crack. That night, the children from Noelle's studio were invited to perform. They were clumsy, joyous, unpolished, and utterly perfect. James took the final bow, holding the hands of two other kids with leg braces, smiling like he'd won the world. After the performance, I found her backstage. "You used my name," she said, eyes narrowed. "It's your work. You still don't get it." I hesitated. "Then teach me." She stared at me, then softened. "You're learning to listen. That's a start." But there was something off. A sadness in her posture. Like she was already preparing to disappear again. "You're leaving, aren't you?" No response. "Why?" Noelle exhaled. "Because your world doesn't allow people like me to stay. It celebrates us for a moment, then buries us in paperwork headlines and expectations we never agreed to. Then don't leave," I said. "Lead. I don't have your money. You have something better. You have James." Her eyes flared, caught off guard. "You gave him back to me. Not just his movement. His joy. You led him when I was too scared to try. I don't need a CEO. I need a partner. Someone who knows how to turn broken steps into a rhythm." The silence between us was louder than the gala music. Then, finally, she said, "Only if we do it my way." I held out my hand. "Your way." We shook on it. That night I danced. For the first time. Ever. Noelle showed me how to move without calculating my steps. How to feel instead of predict. I stumbled. She laughed. I fell. She pulled me up. And in the middle of that gleaming ballroom, I realized something. I'd spent my life controlling everything markets people outcomes. But the most important things were never meant to be controlled. They were meant to be felt. James watched from the side, beaming like a proud parent. And for once, I was the student, the real twist. It wasn't James who needed a leader. It was me. That night, I became the man my son thought I already was. And Noelle, she became something the world couldn't ignore. A lighthouse in denim. I woke to sunlight bleeding through gauzy curtains, the faint smell of coffee drifting through the house. For the first time in years, My dreams weren't about mergers or fires to put out. They were about a little boy spinning in crooked circles, a woman who moved like rhythm personified, and a dance that hadn't ended when the music stopped. James sat at the kitchen counter clumsily slicing a banana. "I'm making breakfast," he declared. I smiled. "That's half a banana and a fork." "I'm a work in progress," he shrugged. "Like you." I laughed harder than I had in months. It was true. James was learning how to control his left side again. And I, Jonathan Merrick Titan of Tech, was learning how to live with less control altogether. But peace has a short shelf life when your name is worth billions. At 10:02 a.m., the wolves came. Emails, voicemails, legal flags, board members threatening revolt, headlines screaming, Meritech. Tycoon abandons Empire for Dance Project. Is Jonathan Merrick losing his mind? They came for me like they always did, quiet at first, then sharp as knives. Shareholders demanded explanations. Reporters demanded interviews. And one anonymous executive sent me a memo that simply said, "You built a kingdom. Don't destroy it for a girl with broken shoes." But I wasn't afraid, because I had seen her shoes, torn at the soles, stitched with thread and willpower, worn down but still dancing, still leading. I drove to the studio that day to find Noelle already there leading a rehearsal. She didn't flinch when I entered, didn't stop when the whispers began. The kids turned to me not in awe, but in trust. I was theirs now. She noticed my silence. "Let me guess. They're calling you crazy. Some are, and the rest, they're just scared." "Good," she said. "Let them be. Maybe for once they'll feel what we live with every day." I stayed quiet. She walked over, handed me a mop. "What's this for?" I asked. "You want to help start by cleaning the floor before my kids trip on your expensive loafers." And so I mopped. The man who once hired people to polish his gold faucets was now scrubbing sweat from hardwood. It felt right, but nothing good comes without a test. That evening, as we closed up a black Escalade pulled up outside the studio, 3 men stepped out, suits, clean cut, the kind of corporate presence that sucked warmth out of a room. One of them stepped forward. "Mr. Merrick, we need to talk." I nodded. "Say it here." He looked at Noelle, then back at me. "Privately." She stays. A pause. "Then the board has filed a motion to vote you out, effective immediately." Noelle folded her arms. "Wow, that's fast." The man ignored her. "They claim abandonment, mismanagement, emotional instability. They're citing your alliance with unaccredited programs." I smiled. "Unaccredited. You mean the woman who got my son to dance after 3 years in a wheelchair. Mr. Merrick?" He said low and menacing. "If you don't return to your position immediately, your reputation, your assets, even your legacy, it all goes up in smoke." Noelle looked at me then, not with fear, but challenge, and I answered, "Let it burn." The man stepped back, stunned. "You can't be serious." But I was. Legacy means nothing if it's built on silence, on absence, on never showing up. I've missed birthdays, school plays, childhood. I'm done missing. They left, silent and seething. As the taillights disappeared, Noelle walked to the doorway. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, finally, she said, "You didn't do that for me." "No, you did that for James." "Yes." She nodded. "Then maybe you're ready." "For what?" "To lead something worth bleeding for." That night we danced again. No cameras, no reporters, just music from a busted speaker, and James watching with wide eyes as his father, stiff, clumsy barefoot, finally let go. I tripped. I laughed. Noelle caught me. And I realized something I'd never understood before. Dancing isn't about getting the steps right. It's about staying in motion even when you fall, especially when you fall. And we were all falling forward together. They say people with nothing to hide don't run. But the thing about Noelle, she never ran. She danced around questions, spun past assumptions, dodged praise with a pirouette of silence. But she never ran. Until one morning she was simply gone. No note. No text. Not even her signature crooked mug on the front counter of the studio. James noticed first. "Where's Noelle?" he asked, halfway through tying his practice shoes. "She's probably late," I lied. But even I didn't believe it. By noon, I had called every hospital, every contact at the studio, even Gregory at the ballroom. Nothing. It was as if she had been erased. Again, the kids noticed. Parents started to whisper. Donations paused. I felt the momentum we'd fought for slipping like sand between clenched fists. I sat at her desk, thumbing through a drawer filled with taped-up flash drives notes with choreography sketches and an old photo tucked beneath a journal. It was worn at the edges, nearly torn in half. It showed a much younger Noelle, standing in front of a burned-out church. Beside her was a man in military uniform, African-American, tall, with the posture of someone who had never stopped standing at attention. His hand rested protectively on her shoulder. On the back, scribbled in rushed cursive, Fort Gordon, 2012. J.C. I stared at the name. J.C. And I knew what I had to do. It took less than 3 phone calls to reach someone at Fort Gordon who remembered a Sergeant Jeremiah Cole. Decorated. Honorable discharge. Single father. Killed in a house fire, 2014. Only one next of kin listed Noelle Cole. The records were sparse. She'd entered foster care shortly after. Bounced from home to home. Juvenile incident. No convictions. She aged out of the system by 18. No college. No stable job history. No fixed address. Until now, my throat closed. She had rebuilt herself from ashes, and still she danced. I found her 2 days later. Not in a studio, not in a shelter, not even on the grid. She was at a veterans rehab center on the outskirts of Augusta, wearing scrubs 2 sizes too big. Teaching rhythm therapy to amputees and stroke victims. When I walked in, she didn't look surprised. "You found me," she said, wiping sweat from her brow. "You disappeared. I relocated. Why?" She finally looked at me. "Because this is the work. Not the ribbon cuttings. Not the galas. It's right here. One limb, one heartbeat, one forgotten soul at a time. But the studio will survive. Because it's not built on me. It's built on the kids." I stepped closer. "You think that justifies vanishing James was, I was worried." Her voice softened. "I needed to disappear. To remember why I started." She motioned to a man in the corner trying to relearn how to raise his left arm in time with a beat. "That's Ron. Navy vet. Haven't seen him smile in 2 years. Today he clapped on time. Twice." She turned to me. "You want the truth, Jonathan? My father was a dancer. Before the war. Before the medals. He taught me everything. He said, when you feel pain, don't run. You move. Even if it's just a sway. That's what kept me going. I didn't have words, just breath." Then she said, "And when the fire took him, I danced barefoot on the church floor right over the ashes. They thought I was crazy. I just didn't know how else to keep him alive. That broke me. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back. I didn't want to be your story, she whispered. Your redemption arc. Your black angel who fixes everything. You're not, I said, voice tight. You're my partner. She watched me for a long moment, then nodded ever so slightly. We drove back that night in silence. The city was behind us. The empire I'd left was buzzing again, trying to smear, trying to reclaim. But for the first time I didn't care, because in that silence I saw clearly Noelle didn't need a spotlight. She was the light. She didn't want a monument. She wanted movement. She didn't want my empire. She wanted impact. And if I had to fight the world for her vision, I would. That night, James met us at the door. He was in his chair holding a letter. "What's this?" I asked. He smiled. "It's from the city. They're approving your permit." I blinked. "What permit?" Noelle grinned. "The one he applied for." James beamed. "I want to turn the abandoned rec center into the new studio. Bigger mirrors, more ramps, maybe even a stage." She looked at me surprised. "You inspired him," I said. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "He did that." And just like that, the dance took another step. One none of us saw coming. They came for us quietly. Not with lawsuits or cameras this time, but with code violations. City inspectors showed up one gray Tuesday clipboards and hand smirks buried behind procedural language. Insufficient fire exits. Unstable foundation. Non-compliant ramp angle. It was surgical. By 4:00 p.m., the new rec center James's dream was shut down before it even opened. James sat on the sidewalk outside, clutching the eviction notice, blinking hard to hide the tears. Noelle paced like a caged flame fury, wrapped in silence. I stood between them, both helpless for the first time in years. "They're trying to make an example of you," she said, voice low. "Rich man turns rebel. Black woman inspires him. System panics." "They won't win," I said. But the truth, I wasn't sure, because this time they weren't attacking me. They were going after us. The next week was war in slow motion. The media circled like vultures. Jonathan Merrick Unravels made a front page across every financial outlet. Anonymous op-eds called Noelle a distraction. A city official accidentally leaked our pending studio plans, labeling it an unregulated liability. But the worst came from people we'd trusted. A city council member I'd donated to for 5 straight years refused to take my calls. A former friend told me, "This isn't the fight you want, John. Let it go." Noelle said nothing, but I saw her withdraw. Less laughter in her voice, less fire in her step. Until the day she didn't show up at all. Again, I found her at the original dance studio, the one with the duct-taped stereo and missing chair leg. She was alone, sitting cross-legged on the floor, barefoot, eyes closed. The lights were off. No music, just silence. I used to think rhythm could heal anything she said without opening her eyes. But I forgot. Sometimes silence is louder. I knelt beside her. "You're scared." "Of course I'm scared." "Of what?" "That I was wrong about you." That hit deeper than any headline. "You're not," I said. "But if you are, I'll spend the rest of my life proving you right again." She opened her eyes. "Then fight with me." Not for me. And just like that, the silence broke. We called every parent, every volunteer, every student. Noelle recorded a video, raw, unedited, telling our story from the beginning. James narrated the second half. In a trembling voice, he said, "I used to think being different meant being broken. But now I know. I just needed a new beat." The video exploded. In 48 hours, we had over 4 million views. Donations poured in. Letters from veterans, from single mothers, from kids in chairs and casts and silence. But most importantly, City Hall noticed and panicked. They called for a public hearing, an emergency session. I wore jeans and a hoodie. Noelle wore her beat-up sneakers like armor. James insisted on rolling himself into the chamber. The room was packed. We spoke last. Noelle stood first. "I've danced on ash," she said. "I've taught amputees to twirl and kids with spines curved like rivers to hold their heads high, all without permission, because I never needed it, and neither do they." Then James wheeled forward. "Y'all see me like this," he said, patting his chair. "But you didn't see me when I couldn't smile, or move, or believe. Noelle didn't fix me. She reminded me I wasn't broken." Silence, then applause, then the twist. From the far corner of the room, an older man stood. Thin, gray hair. Army pin on his blazer. He walked to the microphone and said, "I'm Councilman Harwood, and I was one of the no votes on this studio. But I've seen enough now to change it." He paused, looked straight at James. "Son, I served with men who lost limbs, hope, even names. But the ones who danced again, they never forgot who showed them how. I vote yes." He turned to the others. "And I ask you to do the same." One by one the votes turned. 7, 2, 8, 1. Unanimous. Motion passed. Outside, the city lights were brighter than I remembered. James wheeled in circles on the sidewalk, laughing. We won. We won. I looked to Noelle, who was staring up at the stars like she'd never seen them before. She said we didn't win yet. We just got the music turned back on. "Then let's dance," I whispered. She took my hand, and for the first time in weeks we moved again. Together. The grand opening wasn't supposed to be a spectacle. That was never Noelle's style. She wanted simple string lights, folding chairs, maybe a few local artists painting murals on the walls of the rec center. No red carpet, no sponsors, no billionaires giving bloated speeches. Just music, just motion, just kids. But word had gotten out. And when something real happens in a world starving for authenticity, people come. Hundreds showed up. Not just parents and students. Veterans in wheelchairs, journalists with teary eyes. Strangers who'd watched our video and felt seen for the first time. Even the councilman who'd cast the first no showed up in a Move Again hoodie unironically. I stood in the corner watching James in his navy suit, hair slicked back, adjusting the mic on stage. He didn't need me beside him anymore. He had found his voice, and he used it. I used to think I'd never dance again. I thought my story ended when the accident happened. But I was wrong. The story didn't end. It just changed rhythm. He looked at Noelle. She taught me that. The crowd turned to her. She didn't flinch. She never did. She didn't see a broken kid, James continued. She saw music where I saw silence. Movement where I saw stillness. And because of that, I get to live again. Then he said the line that broke something in all of us. So tonight I want to ask my teacher to dance with me. One more time. The room held its breath. Noelle walked slowly to the center of the polished floor, barefoot as always. James stood with effort, bracing on his own 2 feet. No cane. No wheelchair. The music began. It wasn't a waltz. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't perfect. But it was beautiful. Every shaky step was a triumph. Every sway a battle cry. She didn't lead. He didn't follow. They moved as one equal free untethered. People cried. Others stood. A few danced in place, unable to stay still in the presence of such raw grace. And me, I cried harder than I ever had. Not because I was proud, because I finally understood. After the applause, after the cake, after the children spun circles into the night air, Noelle found me under a tree outside the rec center. "You did it," I whispered. She shook her head. We did. We sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that only exists between two people who have seen each other fully, flaws, fear past, and all. "You know," I said, "they keep calling me a changed man." She smiled faintly. "Are you?" I thought about it, about the years I spent obsessed with success, the birthdays I missed, the silence in James's room after his mother left, the way I thought money could fill the space love used to live in. And now this woman, this barefoot warrior, this lighthouse with no interest in praise. She didn't just change me. She saved us. "Yes," I said, "I think I am." Noelle stood. "Then don't just say it. Live it." I stood too. "With you." She met my gaze. "With all of us." The months that followed weren't easy. The press moved on. The money came slow. We had to fix leaks, fundraise like mad, even paint the walls ourselves some weeks. But the place never stopped moving. Kids danced. Veterans moved again. Parents cried in hallways watching limbs and hearts unfreeze. And James, he started teaching his own class, adaptive hip-hop. He said rhythm belonged to everyone now. And on our 1-year anniversary, something happened I never expected. He asked me to dance with him, just a slow sway, barefoot, in front of everyone. I hesitated. "I don't know the steps," I whispered. "You don't have to," he said. "You just have to show up." So I did, and I moved, awkward, graceless, laughing, and alive. Epilogue, the rhythm of forever. They wrote articles about it. Some called it a miracle. Others called it a redemption arc. But I call it the truth, because here's what they never tell you. Sometimes the people with the least give you the most. Sometimes the barefoot woman with broken shoes is the one holding up the world. And sometimes healing doesn't look like therapy or surgery. Sometimes it looks like a dance, one that begins with a step, even if it's wobbly, even if it's slow, even if you're terrified. You step, and suddenly you're not alone anymore. So if you're watching this wondering if your life can change, I'm telling you as a father, as a man, as someone who almost lost everything chasing the wrong music. Yes, you can dance again, even now. Sometimes we think power comes from wealth control or the ability to command a room. But this story reminds us true strength is found in showing up, in letting go, and in choosing to move even when the world tells you to sit still. A billionaire taught the world how to code, but a barefoot dance teacher taught him how to feel, and his disabled son. He reminded us all that you don't have to walk perfectly to lead. So, if this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own rhythm, your own pain, your own journey back to joy, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below. Who's the Noelle in your life? Share this with someone who needs to know they are not broken. They are becoming. Because sometimes the dance you thought you'd never take again is just waiting for one step, and will be right here waiting to cheer you on.